Welcome into an emergency edition of the Patriots Hub Podcast. Alex, Barth, Matt Dolloff from 98.5 thesportshub.com. We had to get this one in, Dolloff, because big news tonight on Tuesday night, the Patriots signing wide receiver Stefon Diggs. It's a 3-year deal. Now, you got to hang with me with the numbers here because there's quite a gap, and we'll talk about that. It is a 3-year deal worth up to $69 million. With $26 million guaranteed. So Stefon Diggs, 31 years old, coming off a torn ACL. He met with the Patriots last week. We heard the meeting went well. Both sides, I guess, I don't know, took the weekend, slept on it, whatever you want to call it. Maybe the Giants signing Russell Wilson like 20 minutes before changed things. But your initial reaction, Stefon Diggs is a New England Patriot.
Had to be done. It had to be done at this point, Barth. We talked a lot about them needing to get the number one receiver, obviously. But going into free agency, there was all these dreams about, trading for T. Higgins after he got the franchise tag, or trading for DK Metcalf. And I always thought that those were sort of pie in the sky pipe dreams. And if you want that guy, you want the receiver, the true number one receiver who's in his prime, got to draft that guy. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. I don't know if they can get that guy this year. Maybe next year they can sort of focus on that. They obviously need a long-term solution at the wide receiver position, pretty much up and down the depth chart. But Stefon Diggs was the best receiver available. He's probably the closest thing to a true number one that the Patriots could get at this point. And it's debatable where he sort of ranks in terms of is he a true number one receiver? What is he at this stage of his career? Obviously coming off the torn ACL, he's on the wrong side of 30. But on the Patriots, he's the clear-cut number one receiver. Getting them the ball is going to be a priority. That will not be an issue. He will not have issues with how he's used in the offense because I believe he will be used heavily. There's obviously risk involved with the injury and the fact that he's probably not going to miss a lot of camp. I guess there's reports out there that he might be able to make it back in time for week 1, but he's not going to have a full offseason with the Patriots. So there's going to be sort of having to get up to speed, and who knows if he's not ready for the start of the season, that might bleed into this year, and that's probably why this is sort of a 2-year deal. If you parse out the math, it feels more like 2 years, $26 million guaranteed, and then we'll see about the rest. And so, Look, if he gets to $69 million, that means things went really well for Stefon Diggs and the Patriots. But this was their best option to get a number one receiver, and I think for them, he's the number one receiver. And I think, in general, in terms of the league, I don't have the list in front of me, but, can you name 15, 16 receivers you'd rather have over Stefon Diggs? I mean, assuming he's close to the same player he was prior to the injury, he was still really, really good last year. And I know that, he's going to be 32 coming back from a torn ACL. You could go off the cliff. He could be cooked in a short order here. But for the Patriots, this is what they needed to do. It had to be done. And so I'm glad that they brought in someone with talent, someone that we've been talking about on previous podcasts to legitimize the offense. And this is just something that had to happen.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of good points there. And I'll just add, you're going to hear me be pretty excited about this signing in this podcast because I am. That comes with context, though. I think it's important to mention that this was not an ideal signing at the beginning of the offseason. It was DK Metcalf. It was T. Higgins. It was that group. And they missed on that group. And they still missed. That is all still true. Diggs comes with questions, the age and the injury chief among them, like you said. But for where things are now, in the past couple of years, it felt like in free agency, especially last year, they didn't get their guys initially. And then they let a bad situation get worse by kind of being done. I'd even go back to Cooper Kupp. I prefer this deal, and Kupp got less overall money, but I bet the guaranteed is higher. Kupp got $345, but I bet there's more guaranteed money in that 45 than there is of the 26 Diggs is getting out of the 69. This deal is the right move for them to make right now, and the best way to try to couch themselves against the misses they had early on. He's 31 years old. He's going to be 32 in November. He's coming off torn ACL. Like you said, there might not be much there, but if this does work out, Diggs has been one of the more underrated players in the NFL. And that's not to say he hasn't gotten his flowers. He has. But I would say he's been...
What are you overrated compared to what? You think he's been a top 5 receiver and people talk about him like he's sort of outside of that
I think a lot of the credit for the Bills offense, you'll be surprised I have this take, right? An inordinate share of the pie for the credit of the Bills offense has gone to Josh Allen. And I think a lot of that has come from what should be Stefon Diggs' slice. And then last year in Houston, that's its own thing. But like, if it works out, he has a chance to be, I don't know, he's going to be what Higgins or Metcalf would be, but he has a chance to be close. He can be a 1,000-yard guy. Like, if he's 80% of the player he was last year, certainly the player he was 2 years ago in Buffalo, if he's 80% of that, is that not the best receiver they've had since Julian Edelman?
No, it is.
Kind of like significantly, maybe Jacoby Myers is in there, but like, you're betting on upside here. And there is definitely a way it doesn't work. There certainly is, but it seems like they've relatively protected themselves financially in that situation. Again, do not look at the $69 million number. Do not look at the man behind the curtain, right?
Do not look at the 69.
Right. Yeah. That number is Fugazi. That if there's so many bonuses in that, if he gets close to earning that, he's going to be well freaking worth it. Like sometimes you see these contracts where a guy has $1 million, $2 million bonus each year if the team wins the Super Bowl. Nobody's going to care if he hits that bonus. That'd be great, right? So 26 million over 3 years, which is probably more like 2. My guess is it's like 16 to 18 in the first year, the rest of it on that back end, so they can get out of it with a very reasonable cap hit next year if it doesn't work out. And again, if it does work out, I found an old tweet of mine from 2020 where I said Stefon Diggs is the best thing to ever happen to Josh Allen. And it is not a coincidence. I'm not saying Diggs is entirely responsible, but it is not a coincidence that Allen's ascension coincided with Diggs' arrival in Buffalo. Diggs is 5 years older now. I get that. It's not going to be exactly the same. But if he's healthy, he's a guy that has seen quarterbacks kind of take this leap that we want Drake May to make. I think he'd be a great, first of all, just great target for Drake May, a guy Drake May can trust, a guy he can use to stretch the field and can be available to him at all 3 levels and can, fight through coverage again if he's healthy.
Yep.
I think he can be a great resource for Drake May off the field, having seen what Josh Allen did. And I think he can be a good resource for some of the younger receivers in the room. I'm not as worried about and we talked about this on Monday, the attitude, off-field stuff, all of that. Like, is he a little abrasive? Maybe that wide receiver room could use somebody that's going to be on their ass a little bit more and like is competitive. And you used the term, he has a tendency to wear out his welcome. Well, it's a 2-year deal. In the second year, there's not a ton of money attached. If he wears out his welcome, like the Patriots can part ways with him. He's not a long-term answer. He's a bridge. It's 2 years, maybe 3 max. I like they did that second year because if he is in good shape this year, he's not going to just run to the open market and reset his value, still have him. But I for where they're at, it's a good move. It's a good, solid move.
Okay, I'm going to do my best to respond to all your bullet points.
Sorry, that was my kind of opening take. 8 minutes
okay.
in, we've now each given an opening take.
We're both a little excited. But just to rewind all the way back to Cooper Kupp, I mean, look, don't get me wrong, Cooper Kupp, very good player. But he had that one historic season and a bunch of pretty good seasons, in between that. Stefon Diggs, to me, has been more consistent as a number 1 guy. He's done it in multiple locations. He's done it with multiple quarterbacks. Case Keenum has a nice career highlight thanks to Stefon Diggs and that Minnesota Miracle play. It's one of my favorite plays ever. One of the only plays of my life where I jumped out of my seat like, oh, my God, what just happened? So I'm glad the Patriots have a guy like that on the team, the guy that has shown up in big games like that. Like, I mean, I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but I don't think he's a guy that's been disappearing in big games. I think he's a guy that sort of elevates when he gets to that sort of stage. And I'm not saying the Patriots are going to be a playoff team now.
Right.
But they need that guy, like you said, to maybe give a kick in the ass to the wide receiver room. Like, this is a room that started to come off a little entitled last year, according to their talent level. And, at least Stefon Diggs is a guy that's sort of been there and accomplished something as a wide receiver in this league. He's the clear number 1 guy. And so, yeah, I think they needed him for the room. And we went over it on the podcast yesterday. Like, yeah, he might wear out his welcome if he gets a big long-term deal. But, like, I'm not even sure I see him making it through the 3 years in New England. Like, who even knows what kind of player he's going to be at age 34? Like, receivers tend to break down pretty quickly. And so
right.
I think that's the risk with Stefon Diggs is the physical part of it. I don't think the mental part of it is as much of a risk. And just to touch on the quarterback part with Drake May, like Josh Allen going into that season, when they traded for Stefon Diggs, he hadn't shown anything really as a quarterback. He'd shown a little bit of running ability.
He'd shown a lot of turnovers.
A lot of athleticism, but a lot of dumb turnovers, and people were wondering like, what is this guy gonna be? Like he was looking like maybe another like Daniel Jones type of quarterback after 2 years, and then all of a sudden he gets Stefon Diggs and he takes off. And so you hope the same thing happens with Drake May here in New England. And I forget if you mentioned this guy, but he's going to be a great resource for Josh McDaniels too. He's going to be able to use him in a variety of ways in the passing game, line him up wherever he wants, run a variety of routes. And he's going to be hopefully a reliable red zone guy, a reliable chain mover, like do pretty much whatever you need him to do at receiver, assuming he's healthy. Like you just got to assume that he gets back, he's healthy, and he's close to what he was before the injury. But if he is, he checks a ton of boxes for them on the field. And I think that sort of, it at least offsets, but probably overcomes the stuff that might come with him off the field because it's a low-risk, relatively short-term deal for him.
So this is going to be kind of a quicker one, but I just a few things I want to touch on. Your mic was like way down. All right, we'll have to fix that in post. Thanks to whoever pointed that out in the comments. I thought that was just my computer being weird. You're good now. You're good now. You're good now.
Sorry about that.
Well,
I have a loud voice anyway. Hopefully they could hear me anyway.
Well, I couldn't tell, right? A couple more things I want to touch on. So the timeline for Diggs, and this is the one immediate drawback to me. Like I said, I'm not as worried about the off the field stuff. But when it comes to him getting on the field, like he's probably not going to have much of an offseason program with Drake May. You know, how will they get on the same page? You hope Diggs is around as much as possible in the meeting rooms and things like that and walking through at practice to get on the same page as everybody. Adam Schefter did have a report that Diggs thinks he can be ready week 1. It'd be great. You know, he tore his ACL. Actually, I have it here. I think it was October 27th last year.
How's my mic now, by the way?
You're good. Okay. It was on my end. It was weird on here for some reasons. Again, live podcast, going right to it. So Diggs tore his ACL on October 27th of last year. Assuming the Patriots are opening up on Sunday, their first game would be September 7th. So you're talking about 10 months. The record, whatever you want to call it, Adrian Peterson famously came back in 8 months. So it has been done. But like Kendrick Bourne tore his ACL at the end of October last year, came back at the beginning of October. So he was 11 months. That is the one downside, that he won't be good to go. What that does in my mind is it creates a situation, and we did this last year with Bourne, where Douglas and Mac Hollins are going to make the team. Like, I feel comfortable about that. So that's 2 spots. You then have Baker, Polk, Bourne, Booty, those 4 guys initially competing for 3 or 4 spots, because Diggs, assuming he opens on PUP, or maybe he comes back at the very end of camp and then they throw him on that designated to return IR, something like that. He has he'll give you a roster spot. So it creates more competition there, but that is the one downside to me, is that I would be surprised if Diggs is on the field with Drake May before like mid-August at the earliest. That would be a really aggressive timeline if he's back by then.
Yeah, I mean, like we've been over it, but like that's the risk, is that like it's going to be sort of a slow ramp up for him, and like is he going to have enough for you to contribute enough to win games earlier in the year? Like you don't want to get in an early hole, and so you have to hope that maybe the Patriots defense sort of gets up to speed with the new system, new coaches, a lot of new players. Like you hope that comes together relatively quickly and keeps them in these games. But yeah, like looking at the rest of the receivers, Barth, like I know that you've been on this a lot, how they have sort of a crowded room now. And like obviously Diggs is the clear cut number 1, assuming he's back and he's healthy and all that. But after that, you really have a bunch of number threes and 4s. I think Mac Hollins makes the team. They brought him in as sort of one of their priority signings, and Josh McDaniels likes him. He's had success with him in Vegas, so I think he's on the team. And Pop Douglas is a guy that they've liked, regardless of who the coach is. And so he's still like, look, he's the slot guy. I think Pop has become maybe a tad bit overrated here in New England because he's very likable. He has a nice nickname. He's fun. But he's really just a slot receiver at the end of the day. Like, I think he's a good slot receiver, and he's their slot receiver. And so I think he's in. I just think I don't think he's like a must-have on the roster necessarily, but I think he's in realistically. And then you look at Kayshon Boutte and Kendrick Bourne and Javon Baker, I think can be considered a long shot. I forget if you mentioned Jalen Polk. Like, I find it hard
I meant to. He should be in that group.
I forget. I find it hard to believe they'd move on from a second-round pick before his second season begins. That he might have a Duke Dawson situation, I guess. But that would mean that like he's given them absolutely nothing in camp. I'd be surprised if that happens. And so, yeah, I think Diggs, Hollins, Douglas, and Polk. And then after that, like I like what Kayshon Boutte showed last year, but I wouldn't be shocked if he turned into, a late camp trade sort of candidate. And Kendrick Bourne, I haven't seen him as really a lock to be on the team, like really at any point. And he's coming up. I mean, well, I guess he's not coming off the injury now, but like I never viewed him as a lock, as likable as he is and as good as he was back in 2021. But yeah, like it's a crowded room right now, but I don't see it sort of turning out that way when we get to August and the end of camp. I think that is sort of going to work itself out. And I think they're going to land on 4 or 5, solid receivers that they're going to have a solid room as long as Diggs is there. But the question is, how are they going to win games in the meantime when Diggs is sort of getting up to speed? Hopefully he's ready for week 1, but I guess that's not really, that's in doubt at this point. So yeah, like you wonder how they're going to make those plays on offense when they really need those plays. I think they're going to be in these games on defense. Like they're going to be in close games because the defense is going to be improved and they're going to be well coached and probably more situationally sound than they were last year. But if Diggs isn't out there or if he's not up to speed, like how are they going to make those plays? How are they going to come up with those plays at the end of the game to come up with more wins than they've come up with in the last couple of years? I think it's going to be something to watch, but I think in terms of the depth chart, I think it's going to work itself out over the course of camp.
And then kind of along those lines, the last thing I want to touch on here, again, this will be a short one. We'll have more written on 985thesportshub.com. Already some stuff up there on Diggs signing. Does this change how you view the Patriots, the 4th overall pick, and their draft strategy as a whole?
Well, Elliot Wolf said that they're going to do best player available no matter what. And I know that Elliot Wolf has gotten himself in trouble the last couple of years with things he said and whether the actions have matched the words or not.
As Daniel Jeremiah told us, the best player available might be Ashton Genty. So and like I asked you about Mason Graham. Like I'm not out on him just yet. Like he might be the best player available. I mean, honestly, like we're not to get into the tackle discussion on this particular pod, but like Will Campbell gets his arms measured again tomorrow. So
no, if Will Campbell is a left guard, could he still be best player available as a Pro Bowl, potentially all-pro caliber left guard? Like I don't want to take a guard at the 4th pick overall either, but I think there's a conversation there just considering the prospects that are in that same group and the flaws they have, and like Ashton Genty's flaws that he plays running back. Other than that, like he's probably going to be a great player.
Well, I'll say the one other flaw with Genty, I meant to say this on Touch and Hardy this morning. I couldn't get it in. He has 750 touches in the last 3 years, which would rank 5th in the NFL during that span. So like he's not an old prospect, but for a running back, that's a lot of mileage, right? And where is he at?
Derrick Henry in high school.
Yeah, seriously, in one game. So that is just a quick aside. That is the downside of Genty. But
okay, that's good to know. But the point I was making though is that the Diggs signing does sort of put them in that direction of being able to take best player available. They're not going to look at it like, oh my God, we have to take Ted McMillan, for instance, at the 4th overall pick. Like they can go into it saying, if Travis Hunter falls to us, great, we can take him. If we get into that scenario that we touched on in the podcast yesterday, where it's like they're at the 4th pick, they're stuck, nobody's trading up to take Shedeur Sanders, and they just have to take best player available. That's a question, but at least they can just determine who's the best player available and take that guy. And they're not there yet at left tackle. I still want them to sign one of these veteran left tackles that's available. And look, I'm not saying any of these guys are going to be, a stalwart starting left tackle for them, or they're going to, change the franchise overnight or anything like that. But they're looking at Vidarian Lowe at left tackle again.
You at least want competition.
You got to have some kind of competition. And so I guess maybe we were all getting a little ahead of ourselves saying, well, there's no way they're going to bring Vidarian Lowe back. They're going to get rid of him. They're going to overhaul that position. No, we might be looking at another year of Vidarian Lowe the way it's going. But yeah, like they're one step closer to just being able to take the best player available because they've sort of filled that big need at wide receiver. They don't feel like they absolutely have to take one of those first round wide receivers. They can sort of, find someone on day 2 or maybe, trade up into the end of the first round. Like they don't have to get desperate for a receiver now. So that's another reason that I like the move.
I feel similarly. I think everything's still in play at 4. I will say this. If you come out, I guess maybe not week 1, but like week 4, right? And you have Diggs as essentially like an undersized, quicker X. You have Travis Hunter as your Z, and you have Pop Douglas in the slot, and you're essentially sort of reversing the Z slot roles from the traditional McDaniels offense. So Hunter becomes your volume guy.
Yep, you still got your tight ends.
And Douglas is stretching a little bit more. Well, I'll just say just the receivers, like Hunter, Diggs, Douglas, that's a legit group. You're not the Bengals with Chase and Higgins. You're not the Eagles with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But that's a representative group. That's significantly ahead of where they've been.
Yeah, you're a far cry from what they've been the past 3-4 years.
So if you can get even if it's McMillan and he's at the X and he maybe gives you a more long-term, because I like the Diggs signing, but he is a bridge. We're still going to do potentially receiver in the first round next year. But, I think that's all in play. The one thing that changes for me for the draft, and I think we disagree on this, is a guy like Jaden Higgins on day 2 or round 2 or Jack Betch in round 3 or Kyle Williams or Torrey Horton in the 4th round. I don't know that they need another guy just in that middle group, right? Especially on day 2, you can get maybe a starting left guard, right? Pick 69, pick 77. Maybe that's where you're getting your running back. Maybe you're, investing in a safety there or something. Those are guys that can make an impact right away versus, all right, well, this receiver we're going to draft and he's going to come in and we're just going to throw him into the competition with Polk and Baker and Booty and Bourne. I don't need them making that pick. If you want to go way later, like 6th round, 7th round, Ricky White, Efton Chisholm, like those guys, fine. But the middle round wide receiver.
Celtics owner?
No, I think I got his name right. You're right. It's the same name. Is it Chisholm? Yeah, Efton Chisholm the third.
I don't know what he's playing football for at this point. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, that's fine. I mean, that could be an Efton Chisholm the third could be a name I'm making up, as you like to say.
I always think you're making names up.
I'm good on the middling wide receiver.
Sort of in the preliminary, deep dive on the draft class. But in terms of the day 2 receivers, don't take the big outside guy unless you think there's a legitimate chance he could be, Terry McLaurin or Nico Collins, like one of these guys that emerges from the 2nd or 3rd round and becomes that true number 1 guy. Like, I don't need them to do that. I don't need them to reach for a Jaden Higgins when he's only like a 2nd or 3rd receiver. I think what I've seen from the day 2 receivers is I like the slot guys. I like, Isaiah Bond, I think, is one guy that I saw that I liked. Jalen Noel is another guy that I think could be on the Patriots radar. Maybe the slot guys make more sense on day 2. Like
I would say if they're going to go receiver there, I'd agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I like Pop Douglas too, but he's in the 3rd year of his rookie deal. Who knows if he can stay healthy, that whole thing. Like I'm not against them drafting a slot receiver. But yeah, don't draft another guy that's just going to be in that same mix with like the 3rd receivers and the complimentary guys. Don't draft a receiver unless you think he's going to be a surefire starter, and certainly not an outside guy unless you think there's a real chance he's going to be like a stud and you're going to get a find there.
I would say with wide receiver this year, either take him high or take him low, right? You're going to get a guy that is going to be right there with Diggs at the top of the depth chart, or like a true flyer outside of the top 200. We're just going to take a shot on this guy and see what happens. Anything in between, I think those resources can be spent better. So we said we were going to do 15 minutes. We're already closer to 30, but this was a good pod. Nice little emergency pod. If that's my bad on messing Matt's audio up. Again, we were trying to just sort of get this up and get going.
I think my mic volume was down because I've had it too high before, so I think I turned it way down.
And you turned it down in the settings? All right, I guess it saved it. So anyway, that's on me. If you want to hear it, with the correct volume, and this is going to sound super weird to people listening back down the road, we will post the audio version fixed on the Patriots Hub podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want, we had a more full conversation on Monday. Some of the Diggs stuff obviously is now dated, but we talked more about the offensive line. We got into some mock drafts talk. If you want to check that out on the that's up on the Sports Hub YouTube page. And I don't think we have any games tonight, right? So I would assume if you're still looking for content after us, I think Joe Murray is probably reacting live right now as well as we record this, approaching the 9 o'clock hour here. Joe, yeah, good for Joe. Joe should be. So and
we'll have him to get some big breaking news when he's
good for Joe
on the night show for a change.
And the shows will have to pick the crumbs tomorrow. I think Tim McCone has to buy everybody lunch, if I understand that correctly. So
did they make a side bet? I missed that part.
I saw people tweeting about it. I honestly didn't see the whole thing, but might be a good day to be in there tomorrow and see what McCone is bringing for everybody. So until the next one, for Matt Dolloff, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in. More coverage on 98.5thesportshub.com.